Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest who's going to be talking with us about leading with emotional intelligence. Kristin Bartholomew is one of the coaches on the Exponent Marketplace, which, if you're not familiar, is a platform designed to connect you with qualified providers who can help you with questions related to your profession, personal life, or your faith. And Kristin is one of the professional coaches on the platform. Kristin is an executive coach and leadership specialist with over 10 years of experience in high performance organizations, from megachurches to Chick-fil-A franchises, which is a fun fact. She has a Bachelor of Science from DePaul University, a Transformational Coaching Certification from Awaken Coach Institute, and a professional certification through the Society for Human Resources. She's skilled at working with clients from one-on-one settings to large group settings of 250 or more. And as a coach, Kristin is passionate about unleashing a client's professional and personal potential, revealing their potential roadblocks and blind spots while shining a light on their intrinsic skills and gifting. Kristin is also the host of the Mom Life Balance podcast, where she brings on guests to talk about anything from family and work to everything in between. And it's a space to encourage, challenge, and uplift you. Kristin is based in Dallas, Texas, and married to her college sweetheart with 3 children. So, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for that kind introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for you to just start off by telling us a little bit about your story, how you became a coach, and why leading with emotional intelligence is something that you really emphasize when you're working with clients.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you covered a lot, but I will go ahead and tell you a little bit of my background. So, for me, it was always very important for me to find the balance between how I felt like I was gifted and to be used in my home and then also out in the workplace. And so, from a very young age, I kind of had some idea of what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be a mom, and I also knew that I had some professional goals that I wanted to fulfill. So I really spent the first, I'd say 10 years of like my 20s. I'd say I'd spent about most of my 20s working on continuing to grow myself as a professional, grow myself individually, and trying to overcome a lot of those feelings of imposter syndrome, times when I would want to hold myself back. Sometimes I did hold myself back. And I I focus so much on being whole in every area of my life. And I think that, I'm kind of jumping the gun, but that's why I really love EQ is that it is so much about that wholeness all around, finding that balance and that sustainability so that you can thrive with other people as an individual in your workplace and in your home. So I spend my time at a mega church up in Chicagoland for about 8.5 years there. The first half of my tenure there was spent overseeing about 250 volunteers in the kids ministry, where I did a lot of we did a lot of like recruitment, onboarding, training, coaching, really building into those leaders and helping maintain a very large and flourishing ministry there. And I found that I really loved taking on new challenges while being able to manage personal responsibilities at the same time.
Mm.
During that time, I started to get new opportunities and I would see new doors open. And
Mm.
sometimes I would have the courage to kind of like poke on the door and see, what's on the other side. And sometimes when I peeked through, I would resort back to these feelings of I'm just a mom, I'm just working
Mm.
part-time, or, I don't have this or that, right? And especially as women, a lot of times we undersell ourselves. There are statistics around how women feel like we need to have, like basically all of the job description just down and perfect. Whereas men are more likely to go for a job that's outside of their skill set, knowing that they will work into those skills. So for me, that was a big learning experience for me. And I learned the hard way by actually turning down a position that would have
Mm.
been great for me because I felt insecure and honestly kind of unworthy of the position. It's hard to say that, but it's true. The position actually opened up to me again about a year later. And I was, presented with the opportunity and said yes that time. And it
Mm.
opened up so many doors for me. It helped me to expand my thought process. It helped me to learn new things that I didn't know that I was capable of,
Mm.
and really got me to where I am today in just my ability to start saying yes. So that's so much of my story is starting to say yes, whether it's a job opportunity for me. That in that same time, I got my HR certification through
Wow.
SHRM. And I actually signed up and trained for, and I'll use the word run really loosely, ran the Chicago Marathon.
Okay. Wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so, I had just had my third baby, and I felt like it's time to start living, right? I had been living, but it was time to start living more boldly. And I
Mm,
just started to say yes, and opportunities came my way, and I embraced them.
wow.
Once you start embracing those opportunities, you can really start stepping through new doors that are bigger and bolder, and have really cool stuff on the other side. So
That's, yeah, amazing.
yeah, that was very much my personal journey, but it's personal and professional. So that led me to my time at Chick-fil-A, where I learned their processes. I learned why they run so smoothly and what their goal strategies are. I learned what it means to take someone from, a first time employee up through into a management role.
Mm,
I had experienced that back at the church, where I started as a contract employee and worked my way up into the executive assistant role,
okay.
where, I was a 15-hour contract employee when I first started. I had
Mm,
just had my second child, felt very much out of my own element, out of my own, uncomfortable in my skin going for that opportunity, right?
yeah.
To 8.5 years later, I'm sitting in executive team meetings and bringing, some really valid and interesting points to top leaders that are making important decisions for, a huge organization. So that time at Chick-fil-A was a cool time for me to see how I can implement that with other people and help them
Mhm.
see what's beyond themselves.
Yeah, that's so incredible. I love like everything you touched on there, from like kind of defining what EQ is to the statistics about women. I think I watched a TED Talk that recently like kind of laid that out, and I was really blown away and also felt very seen at the same time. Yeah, and just I'd love to hear a little more about, like, I know you mentioned you had a position that was presented to you, offered to you, and you turned it down, and then a year later you were able to say yes. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what kind of transpired in that year that gave you the courage to say yes, and yeah, what were some of the things that had really helped you step into your confidence and make some of those bold choices?
Yeah. So I think for me, as soon as I said yes, I had instant regret. Like, why did I say yes or say no? I'm sorry. As soon
Mm,
as I said no, sorry,
mm,
I
you're
had
good.
instant regret. Why would I say no to this opportunity? What was wrong with me, or what was different about me that wasn't capable of doing it? And the answer was nothing, right? I was the only one that was holding myself back. And
Mm,
and that's when I was able to step outside of myself and get out of my own way. That's when
mm,
I was able to do the things. I had always dreamed of running a marathon. I was not a runner, still
mm,
not a runner, but I always wanted the experience of it, right? I always thought it'd be cool to have a podcast where I could interview interesting people and share some cool things with the world, and, make my mark in the world.
mm,
And it wasn't until I started to say yes that the
mm,
things that I actually wanted to do, I started to do them, right?
mm,
And it didn't happen overnight, and it took years of repetition, of stepping outside of my comfort zone, right? All the way back to when I had my first daughter and realized I want to be present at home. I want to find something that works for me. And I'm
mm,
going to explore things that I didn't think I would explore. Getting myself into the marketplace, right? Doing work
yeah.
from home back in 2009, before that was even really a thing, right? We weren't working from home in 2009,
No.
or most of us weren't, but I was,
Mm,
right? And so I've always had kind of a think outside of the box mentality. And I
mm,
try to help my clients have that same mentality
mm,
of, this is where you are right now. Where do you want to go? You're probably going to have to think outside the box for that, right? And there's going to be new skills, and there's going to be that peeling back of the onion, where every layer, it gets maybe harder, but the value and the growth and the payoff is even better, right? It's an even more beautiful development that you can get from it.
yeah.
So that was the big thing for me, was to be able to take a step outside of myself. And I
Mm,
think I kind of saw myself at that time when I said no.
mm,
I really looked at myself and said, wow, I am holding this person back. And it's just me that's doing it, nobody
mm.
else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. So what are some of the that takes a lot of self-awareness, I think, to be able to like see that in yourself and acknowledge that. So what are maybe some of the behaviors or skills that you see in people with high emotional intelligence who are able to kind of take that look at themselves and really evaluate where they need to grow?
So something I use all the time with my clients, and I actually now implement it, with my personal relationships as well, is this opportunity to kind of coach and speak to yourself through a
Mm,
different person. And so, for me, I would say, gosh, if this was my best friend
mm,
or if this was my daughter, what would I tell her in this instance? And it's oftentimes very different than what we would tell ourselves, right? We are our own worst critic. We only see the areas for growth. We don't see the areas that we've already developed and grown.
yeah.
And so when we look at someone else, we see the areas that they've shined, we see the opportunities that they've embraced, and we see the potential in them.
Mm,
And I think that when you flip that question of, hey, what would I say to so and so,
mm,
right? We would usually tell that person to go for it. We would say you're capable, you're qualified, and the areas that you aren't qualified yet, you have every possibility of figuring those out and working through them, right? You are so capable. And so flipping that question on its head
mm,
is, I would say, the number one thing to do if you really want to start looking at yourself differently.
mm.
You kind of have to look at yourself differently, right? You have to look at yourself the way that you look at someone that you love and care about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. That's a great exercise. Yeah, that's really awesome. So where do you have maybe advice for some leaders who have someone on their team who maybe struggles with emotional intelligence but hasn't kind of developed this filter or ability to see outside of themselves? And how do you even identify if emotional intelligence is the root of the issue?
Sure, absolutely. Well, typically when we have an issue in our life and in our leadership, it typically is something within EQ. It encompasses so many things. It's how we see ourselves, how the world sees us, and then how we use our interpersonal skills, how we deal with problems, how we manage our stress. I mean, when you say those five things,
Yeah.
that's pretty much life, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
it pretty much shows up in everything. So any sort of like rub or friction that you're feeling in your life most likely starts somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And, within EQ, the first area that we want to make sure is really polished and we're in a healthy spot is
Mm,
our self-regard, right? How we see ourselves, that self-confidence piece. And
mm,
so for my example, that was not in a place where it was
mm.
not in a healthy spot that first time around, right, with that position. And
Yeah.
so I really had to work on that. And it was kind of a wake-up call, like, wow, if I don't believe in myself, why would anybody else? And yet other people are believing in me. So there's a disconnect here. And I need to like connect some lines and figure myself out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting in this for quite a while, right? So if you are feeling some sort of like a block in your life, or you want something further beyond yourself and you're seeing missed opportunities, I would always recommend grabbing some time with a coach like myself or someone else that you are connected to. Go through an EQI 2.0 assessment. It's a self-assessment. It doesn't take very long, and it gives you just a really good holistic review of kind of where you are, what areas you're strong in, what areas maybe you're weaker in, and then what imbalances there are. EQ is about balance. It's about finding the right fit for all of those areas in your life. You can be the most empathetic person in the world, which is fantastic if you look at only empathy. But if you're super empathetic and you have low independence,
Mm,
that's going to show up in your life, right? And so we need to focus on how do we kind of meet those two in the middle to a
yeah.
healthy spot? How do we get your independence to catch up with this superpower that you have of empathy?
Mm,
So that would be my recommendation is get with a coach, do some EQ coaching, find
yeah.
out where where that imbalance is. And
Mm.
then once you name it, you can start working on it. It's really hard to work on something when you can't name it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. What was the name of that assessment that you mentioned?
Yeah, so it's the EQI 2.0. You do have to go through a certified coach that can help you access that assessment. So there are a lot of EQ assessments online, And I'm sure some of them are probably great.
Yeah.
That's the one that I'm certified in, and that's
Okay.
one I use with all my clients is the EQI 2.0.
And so, and can you break down too, you mentioned in there, there's like I think you said 5 different aspects of EQ. You just kind of break those down for us as
Ah,
well.
absolutely. So I have it printed off right here. The wheel, it's probably not going to look very good on the screen,
Yeah.
but it is used as a wheel within the model because again, that balance is what is key. So we
Mm,
start off with that self-perception, right? How do we see ourselves? What's it like inside of our brains? Are we aware of who we are? Are we believing in ourselves? And then
mm,
we go to that self-expression. So I kind of say, what's it like to be on the other side of the table from me? Right? Am I expressing myself in a way that's healthy and helpful?
mm,
And then we go on to that interpersonal, right? What are my relationships like? Are they mutually satisfying? Can I connect well with others? And
mm,
then we move on to decision making. Am I able to control my impulses? Am I able to problem solve? How am
mm,
I making decisions throughout my life? And then the last one is stress management. This comes up a
mm.
lot, especially when we talk about work-life balance, right? Am I
Yeah.
optimistic?
Mm,
Am I able to tolerate the stress? Can my
mm.
emotions flex with what's going on around me? So those are the 5 components, and there are 15 competencies, sub-competencies within there, 3 for each. And when you take the assessment, you actually get a score for each area, each sub-competency, and then you get an overall score as well. And it's very detailed with lots of great next steps.
Yeah, that's awesome. And saying one, I love what you're saying about how it's about creating balance between all of them, and it really can apply to pretty much any area or
Yeah,
difficulty that you're experiencing. So for people like who are leading a team or find themselves in a position of leadership, and they maybe have individuals on their team that they're wanting to help grow in this.
yeah,
Obviously, it's a personal thing, but what are maybe some ways that leaders themselves could try to maybe coach or pass these skills on to those that they're leading?
absolutely. Well, so the first thing that would be great for a leader in that instance would be to take the EQI 360, which
Okay.
is an assessment where people can actually do a 360 assessment about you, and you can really understand the model, see maybe your blind spots, and work on your own. I think that if you're going to be a coach and you're going to lead people, you need to
Yeah.
really understand where you are in the game
Mhm.
and where you are growing.
Yeah.
Speed of the leader, speed of the team, right? We are modeling what we want for our teams. And
Mhm.
so if we're engaged in it and we care about it, then it's going to go a lot further than like do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
So my first thing would be make sure that you're in a relationship, a coaching relationship and a development path for yourself where you're valuing this.
Mm.
There are so many resources out there. There are podcasts about it, books about it. There's the EQI 2.0. The EQ Edge is a great book that talks about EQI 2.0 and the model. So there are resources like that, but I think the best way to teach anything is to be a student of it yourself.
Yeah, that's really great. That's the one. I love all the resources that you're throwing out there. That's incredible. I'll try to
Yeah,
link some of those below too after this. So I think you touched on a lot of strategies for increasing EQ and like how it's really important. That's kind of where it starts as a leader. So is there any like advice that you would pass on to any of our listeners? Because it is a big concept. And I feel like if you're just starting, it might feel overwhelming. So what
yeah,
would be a piece of advice for like, here's the number one place to start?
yeah. So the number one place to start is how you feel about yourself,
Hmm.
how you see yourself. Do you see yourself in a healthy way? And
Hmm.
anytime you're trying to embark on any sort of a growth opportunity, the very first thing that I have all my clients do is start taking an inventory, right? And
Hmm.
so if you want to work on your EQ, see if your self-regard is in a healthy spot. And the
Hmm.
best way to do that is again, start taking an inventory of it. Get a journal, use your notes app on your phone, however you like, whether you're old school or you like electronics, whatever,
Hmm.
start taking down when you notice either you believing in yourself or you not believing in yourself, when you notice negative self-talk or positive self-talk.
Hmm.
These tapes that we play in our heads over and over again that, oh, I'm just a mom, or I'm just a new leader, or I'm
Hmm.
not even a leader. I'm just an individual, a contributor. I'm just this, right? Every
Yeah.
time we say that to ourselves, we are reinforcing a thought pattern that's not helpful. And it's honestly not helpful for the organization that we're in as well. So start taking note of those things. And then you can start naming where's the area for growth and development? And then you can seek out the
Mm.
right step.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Well, I think like how you even connected to like our internal beliefs impact the organization. I think it's easy to think about that
Yeah.
as something that like, oh, I just need to get over that. But thinking about, I don't know, that at least helps me to think about it as something that like, if I address this, it's actually going to support the people that I'm wanting to lead or, help my organization do better. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not only it's as a leader and it's also as an individual contributor, you know. I mean, let's take it like when you think about your family at home,
Yeah.
wherever you are in the family life, whether you're a child or you're a parent or whatever, if you're off and you're not building into your family in a positive way, it affects everything.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens at work. If you are, questioning yourself and not putting everything into your work because you don't believe in yourself. You wonder, why am I even here?
Hmm.
What were they thinking when they hired me? Everyone has these thoughts from time
Yeah.
to time. And
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we pretend that no, that we're the only ones and everyone else has it all together. Everybody has these thoughts from
Yeah.
the lowest on the totem pole to the owner of the company. We all wonder, oh my goodness, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's okay. And
Mm.
that's life because we're people.
Mm.
And all we can go from there is up, right? And we just keep
Yes.
working on it.
Yeah, that's such a
Yeah.
great reminder. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I think we're gonna wrap up soon here. I want to make sure I respect your time, but is there anything that like I haven't touched on or asked you about EQ that you're like, oh, I really want to make sure that people listening walk away with this?
That a lot hinges on EQ, right? A lot in our lives does. When you look back at the times that you either thrived or maybe that you floundered, you can pretty much pinpoint an area in EQ that was either locked in and like really great,
Mm,
or that really was needing some help and support.
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
so, some people think, oh, it's just this, oh, emotions. I don't want to talk about emotions. It's not like a hug fest, right? We're talking about this is actually how we live our daily lives. And
mm,
this is what it's like to be around me. And this is what it's like to work with me. And this is what it's like when I lay my head on the pillow at night and how I feel about myself.
mm,
And EQ matters. And whether you like it or not, it affects your life and everyone around you. And so it's worth digging into and it's worth investing in and investigating.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to just ask you some rapid fire, like fun questions to get to know
Sure.
you a little bit. Awesome. So you can just say like the first answer that comes to your mind. So the first one is, what is your go-to comfort meal?
Ooh, my go-to comfort meal. So we just moved to Dallas. So I was born and raised my first half of my life out in California. And
Okay.
then when I was 9, my family moved out to the Chicagoland area. I lived there for 30 years. So
Okay.
now I've been in Dallas for 2 years, my family and I. And I have like shout out to In-N-Out. So In-N-Out's out
Oh
here in
yeah.
Dallas.
Love.
And I swear, when we lived in California, that was like such a go-to for us. Moved to
Yeah.
Chicago, and every single trip, the first meal off the plane was In-N-Out. So it's kind of cool that now when I travel to California, I don't have to go to In-N-Out right away.
Yeah.
So long story short, comfort meal for sure. Anything from In-N-Out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't. Yes. Their burgers are my absolute favorite. All right. So a book that has changed your life. And I know you've talked about some of the EQ books. So maybe
Yeah.
we'll take that off the table. So another book that's changed your life.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I love Brene Brown's older work, particularly her older stuff. So I brought it out here. One of the things that I loved was her Rising Strong book. And
Mm.
I was actually reading this book while I was at the church in the kids ministry, working through some of who I am, some of those tapes that I play, thinking
Yeah.
of myself in these situations and learning how to overcome them. So that's a great book, Rising Strong. I highly recommend it. There's so many though.
Yes. She has so many.
Another one that's really great, and I should have looked it up before. This is horrible. I should know all the details, and I don't. But it's a general from our military, and he wrote a book about making your bed. There's actually his commencement speech from a college commencement where he does this as well, and then he turned it into a book. And the whole premise of it is to first thing in the morning get up and make your bed, get your day going with a win, right? And so that's something that I really impart in my coaching and in my family and in my personal life is to start with a win, whether
Mm.
it's making your bed or getting up and doing something right away that starts you off on the right foot. So little plug for that book as well.
That's powerful. That's really good. And last one would be a piece of advice that someone gave you that has stuck with you.
Ooh, that's a good one. A piece of advice that someone gave me that stuck with me would be show me your friends, I'll show you your future. It sounds so simple, but it really is, who we are surrounding ourselves with so much determines the direction that we're going in life.
Mm,
And keeping in mind to have people around you that will build you up, that will build into you, and that will believe in you
mm,
is really crucial and key. And I've seen it go both ways. And,
mm.
and it's totally cliche, but
Sure.
it's also totally true.
Yeah.
And so I work really hard to make sure that I'm inviting people into my circle that help me go the direction that I want to go.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. If you guys watching want to connect with Kristin, I'm going to link to her profile below as well as her podcast. So that way you can go and message her and have a conversation with her yourselves. Kristin, thank you again so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much.